Hi, I'm Father Jim Forson, and I'd like to offer you a reflection on the gospel of this 11th Sunday in Ordinary Time. There's a little girl in the parish here, Sarita, that when she was born with a heart defect. That she couldn't have been more than a month old. That required open heart surgery. And oh my gosh, as you can imagine, at that time, she was just an itty bitty little baby. And everybody was terrified. And she went through the surgery well. But then a complication set in, and something was wrong with one of the valves, I think, and then that required another surgery for the valve. And then not even a month later, she had to go through another open heart surgery. In less than 2.5 months of life, to have 3 major heart surgeries. And I'll tell you, I've had open heart surgery. And if a doctor said to me, Jim, we have to do another open heart surgery, I'd say, call the priest to anoint me. I'm not going through that again. That was so painful and so hard, and for a little baby to go through that. So, imagine this. You're in that hospital room talking to the mom, and she asks you, why is God doing this to me? Why is God doing this to my little daughter? Tell me, what would you say to her? Well, you could say, I don't know. Or you could say, well, it's God's will. It's mysterious. We don't know it. We just have to accept it. It's God's will. Or you could say, it has nothing to do with God. It's just the way life is. Just the way life is. Or among other answers that we could come up with. But whatever we say, it's going to depend a lot upon how we believe and what our faith is like. Because faith is how we understand God, and therefore how we see God active within this world. If our faith is a kind of an intellectual one that is involved more in dogmas and doctrines, which isn't bad, but if that's where our faith is at, well then our response to that woman would just be along the surface of life, because that's where our faith would be, just along the surface. But if our faith was the faith of Jesus Christ, well then we would know what to say to that woman. We would know what to say because Jesus gave the answer to that question in today's gospel. It's an answer that can be very challenging, if not frightening. Jesus was being asked, what is the kingdom of God like? And he gave the answer. He said, the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. And when I say the kingdom of God, Jesus was not talking about heaven. We often think in those terms, kingdom of God is heaven, where we go after we die. No. What he's referring to is, a better way to translate it is the reign of God. Or by reign, it means his activity here on earth. To put it in the simplest way, what is God doing here on earth? What's he up to? What is his reign, his activity about? So they're asking Jesus, what is God's saving activity about here on earth? And his response is, God's saving activity is like a mustard seed. Now, just right there, I want to stop and say to Jesus, really? A mustard seed, which is what, 1 to 2 millimeters in size? That's what God's saving activity looks like? I don't want that. What I want is a redwood tree. Now that would be an example of God's saving activity. Something you've probably seen a redwood tree. They're huge, they're immense, they're powerful, they're big. They've lasted for thousands of years. Fires can't even burn them down. It's almost impossible to cut those things down. Now that would be an example of God's saving activity, so big you just can't believe it. I was reading that in the 1896 Chicago World's Fair. The people in California cut down a redwood tree and sent it in pieces and reassembled it in Chicago for the World's Fair, and people didn't believe it. They thought it was a fake. They had never seen anything like that. That's what I'd like God's saving activity in this world to be like. Something like we've never seen before. But that's not how Jesus described it. He said it's small, it's tiny, it's itty-bitty, almost insignificant in its beginning. But when it's sown into the ground and it grows, it has these incredible branches that spread out, and the birds of the air find shelter in it. That's what God's saving activity is like. What would I say to the woman? What would we say to the woman in the hospital room? Why is God doing this? I guess I would have to say, your little baby daughter is a mustard seed, teeny tiny. But something wonderful is going to come. Something incredible is going to come from her. And if the mom were to say, oh, does that mean she's going to live? The answer would be, I don't know. I don't know if she's going to live. I don't know if she's going to die. But I do know that one way or the other, something wonderful is going to be coming if we have the faith for it. And for little Sarita, something wonderful did come, has come. Thanks be to God, she survived all of those surgeries. And oh my God, we were so frightened for her. But what an amazingly strong little baby girl she was. And I was given the privilege of being able to baptize her and her sisters. And little Sarita right now is, about 5 or 6 years old. And she has so much life and so much energy. I mean, when I walk into church and I know in the opening procession, priest, solemn, it's an important moment. But the little girl will stand on the edge of the pew and wave at me, and you got to wave back. I mean, what are you going to do? Just walk by? So I wave back, and sometimes she's in the pew and she draws pictures and gives them to me, and other times I'm preaching or at Mass and she's up in the front and she's making she's making faces at me, and oh my God, she just warms your heart. She has so much life and so much energy. That little mustard seed has grown tremendous branches, and this bird of the air has found shelter in those branches, as have her family and her friends. This is how God's saving activity is present within this world, if we have faith. Jesus even said one time about that same mustard seed, when the disciples said to him, "We wish we had more faith." And Jesus said, if your faith was the size of a mustard seed, you could say to that tree, uproot yourself and throw it into the ocean, and it would do it. So I think of other mustard seeds in my life. My dad, when my dad died. That little mustard seed, and my dad was just one guy in this whole world of billions of people. But that one little mustard seed, when he died, it taught me so much about death. It taught me the pain of loss. It taught me how long it takes to get over death. It taught me how better to sympathize with families who had gone through death. I had never experienced it before. It was my first time. It taught me so much. And tell me, what good is a priest who doesn't understand death? that little mustard seed, my dad, grew great branches, and this bird found shelter there. And so I guess that's what we'd say to that woman in the hospital room. That little baby girl, that's your mustard seed. God's coming. He's going to plant her. And I don't know if she's going to live or die. And I don't know what's going to come. But all I do know for certain is whatever's coming is going to be something wonderful. And in that something wonderful, we all will find shelter, because we all will find the saving activity of God.